I was reading something yesterday and I came across it, and somebody said that they had eating disorders because they were made to stand in front of their classroom and weigh themselves, and that's what started their anorexia and their trouble with eating disorders. And I thought about that and I was thinking about myself, and I just remember having to be weighed and measured at the beginning of every term when I was at school. Now, I don't know whether that was a normal thing, whether everybody did that, or whether it's because I went to a boarding school even though I wasn't boarding. But we used to have to be made to do that every single term time at the beginning of term, in a queue, in a line with the rest of our class, and about two or three teachers there doing it, taking the weight, the measurement and the height. And I always used to be really embarrassed about it, and they used to write it in the back of our report book as I used to go home at the end of term, which used to petrify me, because my father used to take me into his study at the end of every term and basically reduce me to tears about how I was really not very good at anything, or I was good potentially but I wasn't really trying hard enough. And because the teachers always would write, Lisa's really bright but she could do better, and I think that's what most people get when they're at school, could do better. But I can remember feeling incredibly humiliated by the weight thing mostly, and I was mostly petrified about that. And sometimes I used to try and sort of change the writing. It was always written in fountain pen, and I would try to sort of forge it into something that was less than it was. But my mum was obsessed with weight, and she used to get me to bring the scales into the kitchen and weigh me in the middle of the kitchen floor sort of every Sunday morning. And it used to reduce me to tears, and it would normally end in me going up to my room crying and my mum denying me any treats or any food for that day. And when I was 10, she took me to Weight Watchers. Now, I think that was probably the single most destructive thing that she ever did in terms of my weight, because I remember going to Weight Watchers and it was in this old scout hut, and lovely women there, all lovely old women really. Well, they seemed old to me, I was only 10. It was the mid-70s. That was a time when it was sort of Farrah Fawcett Majors and everybody was super skinny, and Grease came out sort of a bit later on, and it was all kind of lycra and gym bunnies and disco time, and I was, I was a kind of slightly dumpy girl. I wasn't that bad, I was slightly dumpy. And I remember having to be weighed in front of these women every week, and I can remember my mother saying to me, I'm doing this for your own good, because you'll never find a husband if you're fat, and you'll never be happy if you're fat, and I don't want you coming back and blaming me. And I remember thinking at the time that was a really harsh thing to say, and it made me quite upset, because I imagined that I would never meet somebody, nobody would ever fall in love with me because I wasn't skinny. And my mum was somebody who was always very beautiful. I mean, she was incredibly gorgeous, and she was obsessed with her weight and with food, and she obviously had some serious issues with food and laxatives and not eating and binge eating and goodness knows what. And I think she projected that all on me, because I never did anything like that, and I never had an obvious issue with food, other than the fact that I became incredibly overweight when I was older. So I was always denied food. So for packed lunches I would have at school, I would have a couple of crisp breads or Ryvita with Marmite, and perhaps a Satsuma or an apple, and that would probably be about it really. And all of my friends would be having a sort of a sandwich and a yogurt and a penguin bar or a little chocolate bar or a little biscuit bar, and perhaps a few other treats in there as well, maybe a juice box or something. I didn't have that. So I think my body kind of was getting starved of food very, very early on. My mum would say things like, oh, I used to just have a boiled egg and that's all I had all day, or I would just have an apple and some celery for lunch when I was trying to lose weight when I was younger. And I was thinking, well, how is a kind of growing child or a teenager going to be able to survive on that and have a healthy relationship with food? Anyway, as I grew older, I became more and more overweight. And I don't think it was because I necessarily ate too much. It was because I was kind of quite sedentary and quite inactive. But I also, I think my whole sort of metabolism had been messed up, because my mum had had always kind of denied me any treats or any food. My brother had whatever he wanted, and he has always been quite sporty, but he grew up being perfectly normal. And I was not. I was always overweight. I was always very lacking in confidence, never felt good enough, always felt unattractive and ugly, and kind of like the ugly duckling, really. And I don't think I had any particular reason to feel like that. It was just something that was sort of driven into me from a very young age, that I was never going to meet anybody if I was overweight, and I was never going to be anything or do anything with my life if I was like that. And my mum had always had this idea that really, because she didn't go to university or, wasn't particularly clever or anything, that really the only way that you could achieve anything in life was through marriage. And I never believed that. I just think everybody's obviously independent and has to, women's rights, and has to kind of just be, successful and go out there in the world in their own way, 100%, self-dependent, self-determining, and, strong. I think Mum was very, she left school at 15, and I think she just had her looks to rely on, really. Anyway, so I ended up being extremely overweight. So by the time I was 30, I was morbidly obese. I was living in New York. I'd had my son, almost had my son. I think he was, it was 1997 when I had him. So I was kind of almost 32 when I had him. And I was about 34 stone. So that is extremely huge. And I was the kind of person at that point, I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything, I was just this big blob. I didn't have a neck, I was in a wheelchair and on crutches, and I think it was because I think I was so morbidly obese that I would have died. I would have died within a year or two, I think. I was at that point. And I was very fortunate to, fortuitously, through another hospital appointment or doctor's appointment, to meet an amazing surgeon in New York who was developing this weight loss surgery. So I had weight loss surgery and I lost half my body weight. So having lost half my body weight, I then became pregnant again, and I then had both my knees operated on, and I had to learn to walk again. And then I've really literally spent the rest of my life running to catch up. I've always had a very, very healthy relationship with food, and I've always made sure that my children have always had a very healthy relationship with food as well. And I have never, ever, ever reprimanded them about having second helping of something, or having a biscuit from the biscuit box or whatever it is. I've always allowed them pretty much to have snacks and things, as long as they're not just sitting there eating a whole box of chocolates or something. But I've always allowed them, if they ask me, "Mummy, could I have a chocolate?" "Yes, you can have one because we're having supper in an hour or something, or you can wait and you can have a couple of after supper or whatever it is." But I've never said to them, "No, you're not having that." I've never denied them that. And I think it's really important to have a healthy relationship with food. So rewinding back to the woman saying that she thinks that her relationship with food, her dysfunctional relationship with food, her anorexia, began when she did the school project and she was forced to be weighed in front of the class. It kind of took me back to those days, and I think that it's very, very important to have a balanced outlook on food. I'm sure that there are many of you out there who've had a relationship with food which hasn't always been healthy and has been destructive, or has made you feel inadequate, or you may be a size or two too small or too big, or you may have had the same kind of experience of having weight loss surgery, or having some kind of going on a weight loss plan, an exercise plan, and losing half your body weight. I remember I thought I was kind of invisible when I was really huge, because I didn't think that anybody saw me, even though I was absolutely massive, taking over 2 aeroplane seats if I was flying, or not being able to, people bringing me a special chair in a restaurant because I couldn't sit in chairs with arms because I was so big, things like that. And so I always thought I was kind of invisible, but clearly I wasn't, because they saw me coming because I was so huge. and they realised that they were going to have to accommodate me somehow because I wouldn't fit into that particular spot. Very, very embarrassing and humiliating. But I do remember feeling invisible. And as soon as I lost weight, as soon as I lost sort of half my body weight, I can remember going into a shop when I was living in New York, and this woman just looked at me and she was just like, "Oh my God, is that you? You look amazing. I can't believe it. What have you done?" And then I can remember taking my son to the paediatrician, and because we used to have to take him every summer for an annual checkup, and I'd lost all this weight, and the paediatrician had his back to me. He was at his desk, and I walked into the room with my son, and we sat down, and he just turned around and he looked at me and he said to me, "Oh my goodness me, you just, that's amazing. I can't believe it. What's happened? You look fantastic." And I said, "Oh, I had, weight loss surgery, gastric bypass, and blah, blah, blah." I explained briefly what I'd done, and he said to me, "Oh, it's really interesting. I've been reading this survey and this paper about people who've had that and how it's transformed their lives." And he said, "You do realise that one of the fallouts from having that surgery in this paper is the marriage breakdown and relationships break down from it, because the partner of the person that's had the surgery can't deal with it, or the person who's had the surgery sort of reevaluates their lives and see things in a very different way." And I said, "Oh, well, that's not going to happen to me. I can't see how that's going to happen to me." And it did. And I think the reason it does happen is because you kind of leave that person behind in a strange way. If they can't sort of keep up with you, if you're running to catch up on a life that you've lost out on, things that you haven't done, things that you wanted to do, and you've been wanted to be seen in a certain way and have a certain type of a relationship, if that person has always, your partner has always been a kind of feeder and has fed you and has wanted almost subconsciously perhaps to keep you in that state, then clearly things aren't going to work, because you are going to want a whole lot more. You're kind of hungry for life rather than for food. So you're going to be wanting to do different things and experience different things and be seen and felt in a different way. And if that person can't develop and grow with you as you kind of form that new part of you, then it's very difficult. And I think that's what happened to us. But going now into this present moment now, I kind of wouldn't have it any other way, because I lost half my body weight. I had 2 more children. I sort of probably put on a little bit more, but not that much more. And I am now at a point where I want to, again, just get healthy and fit as I'm coming into kind of my 6th, 7th decade. What is it when you're reaching? I'm kind of approaching 60. I'm sort of couple of years away from that, and I feel great, and I think it's really, really important to live your life fully. So for me, I want to get that kind of my fitness up and get healthier, so that's what I'm going to do. But I just wanted to say to everybody out there, I'm sure that we have a similar story, as in I'm sure all of us have had strange, not all of us, because some people just don't have strange relationships with food. But maybe there's something else that you've had a relationship with, which has been quite negative, sort of addictive or obsessive or whatever it is. And so I think there is a common thread there between humans, isn't there? And very often, even however kind of perfect I might think you are, if I look at you from the outside, for instance, I might think, gosh, he looks amazing, she looks amazing. They seem like they're really sorted. They've got everything going for them. I'm sure there are little kind of glitches in there, or little parts that you're not happy with, and that you feel very conscious about, or very conscious of. And I would probably think that's really silly. I mean, like, I've got wrinkly hands, and I would think, well, why is she worried about her wrinkly hands? Or what's wrong with having big feet? Or she's got a gorgeous nose, or I love his hair. Okay, it's great, but it's gorgeous, whatever it is. Or he may have lost his hair, but who cares? And I think, what I think I'm trying to say is, beauty is just skin deep. And really, the beauty is what's on the inside. And you might spend all your time worrying about what you look like, but actually at the end of the day, it's who you are that really matters. And beauty really does shine through. I mean, inner beauty and wholesomeness and kindness and compassion and empathy and all of those things. And I think one of the gifts of being the way I was for so long, for half my life really, is that I have been able to evaluate and see things in a very different way. I have a very different way of looking at things and a very different way of looking at people, and a kind of understanding of how things don't work and how things might work better. And also, yes, I may have missed out massively on relationships because I wasn't a size 0 or I wasn't a size 10 or whatever it is that people find the most alluring and most desirable. Yes, I may have made mistakes, I may have made wrong choices along the way, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't change any of that because I am the person I am now because I went through all of that, and the best is yet to come. And I do believe that, and I kind of feel quite emotional about that because, you know, it's been a tough ride, but I do believe that the best is yet to come. And I can kind of say that from a philosophical point of view, I know, but I have been through it, and my heart goes out to all of you who've been through it too, or who are going through it now. So yeah, solidarity, let's stick together. We're super cool humans, and let's make it work, and let's make the future count, and lots and lots of love, whatever you're going through, whatever's happening in your life. I send all of my heart and all of my thoughts and wishes and strength out to you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Much love.